So as a little appendix to the session before, uh, because this is how the teachings from the higher self and from this is also the spirit guides, and the spiritual guidance, the awakening of ourselves that comes from our higher dimensional self or selves, and what was brought through before. So remember when I said I was looking at the wall? As well, I wasn't looking at the wall, but like oftentimes I'm not looking at something, I'm just resting, my eyes are just there, but the focus is within. So that's what happened before. The focus was within. I was looking at this wall behind me, my eyes were resting on it, and then when that happened, all of a sudden boom, there it was. I saw the head of Nefertiti, but exactly in the position, and I could see that too, not clearly the outline, but I knew, it was Nefertiti's head on the Sphinx, so on a lying lion. And then I had told the story about, that used to be normal for me as a child, that I would, in the clouds and in the tiles and on the walls, and when there would be patterns, but not patterns, that are made to be there, like mathematical, like not actual patterns. So within chaos, that's it. So within what is perceived to be chaos, like just, there's no, it's like seems to be random, exactly. I could see, all of a sudden I would see things as a child. And as a child, there is not the mind that dismisses that, or that makes anything of it either, or that says, this means that, or this means that. It's just perceive. It's just this perceive, and just the openness, the innocence. It's the not consciously knowing of self yet that hasn't come into the consciousness, because that bridge where the soul is received through the feminine brain in the mind, because the mind is not finished yet, or it's not it's not primed yet. It's still growing. It's still being informed. So that bridge to the reflection from receiving the soul, expressing it, then receiving it as a concept, as an understanding, as, this means that, connecting some dots, putting it into a bigger picture. All of that we learn how to do that. Our mind first, we're not born that way. Our mind gets informed. Yes, exactly. And so then later, because we've been born into an inverted, first of all, inverted system, which pulls us out of balance, so out of the natural flow, but also a patriarchal inverted system. So it pulls us into the male part of our brain, so into that into the rational mind, but not holding the balance with the female part of the brain, with the intuitive mind. We're literally being pulled out. The whole system is set up that way in the schools, and how our parents and the people around us, the adults, have been through the same process. So we're being pulled out of the intuitive. That is being completely blocked out. That is given no value. It is not giving any value, any worth, anything to pay attention to. It is pay attention here, into this world, into this way of being, into this how we process reality, how we process data and information. Pay attention here. If you don't do that, it's dangerous. If you don't do that, you get in trouble. If you don't do that, we start to feel the repercussions, because the system, and those that all the conditioned minds, they don't like that, when we don't respond and when we don't do what we're told and all of this, So So that gets lost, that it atrophies. It atrophies. So the balance is lost. Now, how I come now to make this appendix, and what I have to say is, I wasn't thinking of Nefertiti. I didn't have that in my mind. It was, I was within, I was something, I was still, it was just open. I was just in that open flow, and then all of a sudden I see it, and that's the difference. It's not about active imagination, like, oh, imagine ABC, this and that, and then you look at something and see if you can imagine, like pretend, see if you can imagine that to be this or that. No, it comes out of nowhere. It's like looking at the clouds, and all of a sudden you see something, and you weren't searching, because when you search, it doesn't show up. When you search, it doesn't, it's in this relaxed gaze that is not out to get something or out to look something. It's this totally openness, and that is the female principle. It's totally open, and that's also inactive. It's receptive, so it's in, and it can only receive to the depth that it is in that full surrender, because it can only open up to the degree that it is fully surrendered. What inspired me then to make this video is, I stood there from a different angle, found myself, my eyes thinking about whatever, I don't know, somewhere completely different, my eyes resting on the wall, again on the same wall, and on this about in the same spot, but from a completely different angle than before, and boom, I saw clearly, I saw the lion. So now I saw the Sphinx with the lion head, exactly where, at that point in the wall behind me, where I was sitting over there, and I had seen Nefertiti's head on the lion's body. Now, I wasn't looking for that, I wasn't thinking about that, and those are the moments, and that's code from the universe. That is, like when I say the universe talking to me, or my higher self talking to me, but it's like, I say the universe because once you start going, once this gets on, once you get on a roll with this, and the female part of your brain, the intuitive part of your brain starts to come back, gets reactivated. And then with the male part of the brain, because in the beginning, this is what I'm experiencing now, is this, because it has fallen so much off balance, where the male part of the brain has completely, not completely, of course, but is completely, in that sense, inflated. So it's overly active, or completely dominant. Excuse me, that's what I wanted to say. Completely dominant, yes. And so now, as the female part of the brain is coming, since the code came in, really strong activation, and when I, okay, I'm getting a ringing in my ear now. So when I'm relaying the code, that's what's happening too, is I'm activating those that are watching and receiving, because it's just like light language. When you receive the code from another, when it's code, when I say code, I mean in this sense, just like Elsa Dillon or Tom Numbers, for example, the code that they have and how they share it. It doesn't make you think in ways that they think, or it doesn't make you, it's not, that you take over their code. That's not going to, that's not how it works. But it inspires, when you get their code, it inspires your own code activation. It inspires your own relationship with your soul, with your higher self, with the universe, and that you see, because the universe is always talking to us, but can we see it, And so the other thing was that then it was shown to me, because when I get the code, when I know code, when I get it, it's always a feeling. It's not just mental at all, you know. So it's always also a feeling. It lands in the heart. I know it's code. It's connected to the heart. Even though it doesn't have anything to do with love or so, you know, but it's more than a feeling. It's not more than a feeling. It's more than mental. It's not just mental. It's not just a mental thing. That's what I mean. It's because it is our greater being talking to us. And and I mean, the universe is our greater being. God is our greater being. We are God's sparks. All life forms are. And it's just about remembering that, and then we recognize that, or we recognize that and then we remember that. So it was showing me, okay, because I already got that Isis and the Sphinx are like synonymous. That all of that Isis is also a cat being, and that there are other goddesses, but also Hathor. Well, I don't know if Hathor is Isis. I'm not sure about that, but there is a cat being like Sekhmet, and this is what came through. So Sekhmet and Isis synonymous. How that exactly works, I don't know, but that's also part of the code. Because we keep getting also from history, from the symbology and different people in history, and like for example Thoth and is Hermes, you know. Oh, Thoth is Hermes. Oh, the ibis is Thoth. So how can these different depictions of the old gods that were called gods, you know, which is how we call them gods, that they were gods, you know, but they're just, let's just call them beings, you know, or godlike beings, or creator beings, or very, you know, yeah, that they were such powerful beings, they made such an impression that lots of statues were made, you know, and there's lots of historical evidence from them, yeah. So how can it be, yeah, that they are synonymous, this one with that one, and so, and that is coming through in the code, slow, bit by bit. They're showing me this, yeah. And so, and I've been also getting that Isis is synonymous with Nefertiti. So that doesn't mean Isis is Nefertiti, is Nefertiti, or Nefertiti is Isis, but there is synonymousness there. And this is not the video where I'm going to go into how with the synonymous, that because I will make a separate, that will probably come in the, yeah, I will share that in the code. But what I wanted to say is that this was another confirmation. So when I saw the lion head clearly all of a sudden in the same spot, it's like, okay, confirmation. Isis, Sekhmet, Nefertiti, you know, humanoid feline. So now, oh, okay, I got that. Don't know exactly what it means yet, but I register it. And this is what I mean with as children, we saw this, but we didn't register it as, okay, that means that, oh, that means that. We didn't have a relationship with our soul. We didn't have a relay. There was no delay. It was like we were that, it came through, and there was no recognition. There was no reflection yet, because our minds were not informed yet. Yes, that's what it is. That's what it is. So I'm sharing this also to, this is how the code comes through. Like on the one hand, the rational mind will take in information like historical information, historical books, scientists, records, all of this. So that's on the one side, yeah, about history, for example, or certain people in history, or yeah. And on the other side, it has nothing to do with that. There's code that comes through and that tells us things, but it's a completely different language. As you can tell already, it's completely different. And we have been taught, we have been conditioned that that has no value. And we're waking up now to the reality, to the truth, that without this part, the other has no value. We need both. That's what's coming through now. Because on its own, just the rational mind, it leaves us hanging high and dry. It's not alive. And it doesn't nourish us. It's like, okay, why learn on? Where's the nourishment? Where's my connection to this? It's just mental. And maybe it's satisfying a curiosity, but what I found is that it is frustrating. It's not satisfying because every historian, every perspective, every individual who has looked into it will have a different angle at it and will tell a different story. And these stories, they can vary so much that they even completely contradict each other. And the more we look into our history, which is now you have to take different timelines into accord as well. I mean, it is, and then it is so much older than we were told, and then the different timelines, and then all the different perspectives that are now coming up as the suppression is losing its power to suppress. It's extremely complicated and confusing more than anything. So if we don't have, because this is our guidance system. The female intuitive part of the brain is our guidance system. If we don't have that, we will remain in the dead zone and not really ever get satisfaction of, okay, why do you want to know this? What does it have to do with where are you coming from when you are doing research on history? And yes, you would like to know exactly what happened, but how are you going to find that if you only take data that was coming from the rational mind research, from other rational minds that did research? So it's research that has only been done putting puzzle pieces together with physical things that have been found, records and artifacts. And then you put those pieces of the puzzle together in a world of, at the tip and the end of the Kali Yuga, where we have been living for a long time in an inverted matrix system, which means completely taken over by parasitical life forms, created in a way, set up in a way to be able, to keep us asleep, and so also disempowered, so enslaved to a certain box, to a certain reality as well. Oh, don't go off into your own world. Don't go dreaming. You won't get anywhere that way. No. You have to buy into the system, and that's the only way you can get somewhere and be successful. And yeah, exactly. Be successful. Be someone. Make a name for yourself. Live in abundance. We have to conform. We have to adapt, conform. We have to play to. to music that is not coming from our own heart. Okay, I'm going to get that. Okay, so 2 more things to make this round, to finish this off. For one is that you know, and under this is about who are we, on a level of who are we collectively, and what's the history we're standing on, what are our roots, where do we come from, what happened in our past that is, of course, a continuous rollout, and we are, you know, we're at the tip end of it that continues to roll out. And so that's the sequence. It's what was before is why we are today in the situation we are in collectively, you know. So and also to see the patterns, to see the cycles, the stories, the storylines that are reflected everywhere in different colors, that repeat from different angles in a slightly different costume, but they repeat, you know. And to find the silver lining in a system that is not only you know, inverted as I described before, or that's what the inverted system does. It doesn't just insert it doesn't just suppress the truth, because when we know who we are on an individual level, then when we know who we are on an individual level, you see, this knowing is not mental, it is complete. It is that knowing is inside. That knowing is the knowing of the I am. And that aspect of us, that part of us that knows who it is, what it is, that, or better said, knows itself beyond the story of the physical body, that is knowing yourself as soul. And that part cannot be enslaved. That part cannot be that part will be able to differentiate what is true and what is lie, because it is anchored in truth. And then you can tell from that point, you can tell when somebody else is telling a lie. Sometimes, and there's a difference between people saying things that are not true, but they believe that they are true. That's a difference. And people saying things that are not true, that they know are not true. So that's telling a lie straight out. And you can tell. I could tell. I always could, you know, as a child, when people were not in congruence with what they said. Sometimes it's also not necessarily like flat out a lie. Sometimes it's just also that that's again another version of it, that they're saying things that they haven't questioned, that they say things that they just took on like a sponge, and they're just giving it back, you know, they're just replaying that whatever they heard, but it's not something that they have embodied exactly. So that it's then you can sense they are not in alignment with their words. So the more that we are in alignment with ourselves, we can sense that and we can differentiate. And so we cannot be duped also anymore to buy into narratives that are there in order to keep us in the control of the inverted system. So that's one part. We liberate ourselves by self-recognition. And because with self-recognition comes self-embodiment, and with that we are back in the we are guided by our internal guiding system, and we follow that breadcrumb trail. We follow the breadcrumb trail of the living universe, of the divine, because our soul is divine. And then we are guided into fulfillment, you know, and on our way to the soul awakening, we are guided by our soul without being aware of it. into soul awakening. So that also means we have to make the mistakes. So we are also guided into the mistakes. So the mistakes we made are a part of then later becoming aware of that they were mistakes, or when we knew it immediately, become aware why we made the mistakes and where the source of that is. Because the way that we reconcile and the way that we receive ourselves and retrieve our lost aspects, lost in the, or not lost, but fragmented aspects, yes. So the soul shards and the fragmented aspects also in our mind, where we have formed different identities, all built upon certain conditioning, certain imprints, especially traumatic ones. That's why trauma keeps repeating, because we need to go there in order to pick that aspect of our consciousness that has been split off through the trauma, in order to pick that back up and bring that into the whole, you know. And thereby, that piece of us that is suffering, that is still believing itself to be a separate entity, all alone out there and having to fight for survival, and that is running on reversal currents, and that is within negative emotion, which means, when I say, because negative is actually not the right word for it, but it means emotion that is very low frequency, that feels really bad. We have to pick that up. So how do we pick that up? We have to dive down in frequency to get it and re-identify. That's why it keeps repeating. Yeah, that's why we get triggered and we fall back into the same traps. And there we are again, suffering, you know, and it's the same story over and over, same kind of different setting, but kind of it's the same theme. Because that is then when we find ourselves in the same kind of suffering in the same place. That's how we pick them up, when we then in that place recognize, why is this? Why am I feeling this way again? Why? How did this start? You know, what is the source of this suffering? And how can I release it? How can I dissolve it? And that is when we're in that and we realize the truth about it. We realize the truth about it, and then we can simply be the space holders for, when we can be the space holders for the emotional part of it, for the emotions. And that can only be when we are not in the story identified with the victim consciousness. That doesn't mean that we were not a victim, and that doesn't mean that we were not treated unjust and all of this. But in order to receive back the charge, back that it can go, because it wasn't able, that's the trauma, that's the splitting off, it wasn't able to go through the heart, it wasn't able to reconcile. So we can reconcile this charge by being the space holder for our own suffering, for the emotions the emotional landscape that we're feeling. And we can do this when we understand that first of all, when we know we are soul, and when we understand why this is happening to us, why did I have this experience? And even if we don't understand it yet, when we understand the principles, which I'm not going to go into here, but the principles apply to every situation, you know, to every soul that incarnated and that went through a cycle of experiencing being conditioned and going through trauma and so forth. Then we can step out of the victim consciousness and into our soul and hold space for that. And that's how we dissolve the charge. And at some point it gets weaker and weaker, the soul gets stronger and stronger, and then at some point it's finished, it's dissolved. And that doesn't mean that didn't happen, that the trauma didn't happen, but then our focus, first of all, it doesn't get triggered anymore because there's no handle, there's no charge. And then we don't go there anymore. There's nothing that draws us in because there's nothing, everything is processed. Everything is back into, recalibrated. So it becomes a part of our past, like everything else that we don't think about in our past. We don't have to think about it anymore, Okay, so knowing our history, exactly. So what they've done is not only suppress the truth, but also distort, inserting distortions, inserting lies. And then it's like scrambling the whole thing, the whole history, scrambling everything, put all the scrambles in a big box, shake it violently, and then just spread it out all over the earth. That's what they did to have been doing to history, to our history. So, and that on multiple timelines. So yeah, good luck trying to figure that out, what exactly happened. And even if there are people who they can settle for one, like, okay, this is how it was. Lucky for them. But if you do the research and if you spread your gaze wide, you're still going to have all these discrepancies because everyone has a different angle at it, and the discrepancies are so wide. Yeah, so that is why. I didn't mean that all the scientists, because the way that people, like the historians and so forth, that do research with an open mind, how do they come up with, how they connect the dots? That's from the inner guidance system, because that's intuitive. That's the intuitive part of the mind. That's the feminine part. And that's what I meant, is we need the feminine part that intuitively guides us through this maze, through this chaos of also all the puzzle pieces that have come together in our field, so we don't get overwhelmed and lost. We need our guidance system to and give that value and reactivate the intuitive part of our brains. And that comes through as code. That is not rational. So even though, like I say in the I Am Activation Key Code that I've been writing ever since it came in, and I think it was February, it touches upon or uses parts of the information, raw data, historic data, or math, or science, geometry. It uses that. It touches upon that. But it doesn't go by any particular system. It doesn't go by any particular historical narrative, historical, this is what happened in history. It doesn't settle for any one of those that is a settled, rigid structure. It is that intuitive aliveness of the universe that I've always been interested to know what really happened on Earth, especially because we haven't been, all the burnings of the libraries, and then, as I said, the suppression and the distortion and the lies and all of this. So this is like, we are hungry, we want to know, and we were told stories of where humanity comes from. It's really, really ridiculous. It's laughable. It's so ridiculous. If it wasn't so frustrating at the same time, But I mean, that's the game that we chose to come into, and it's also the challenge, It's like, okay, how are we going to arise to this occasion? And that is through the power of the goddess returning, through the power of our intuitive minds reawakening, finding the balance again with it's finding its rhythm, its balance again with the rational mind, so it takes that what we can find in the artifacts and the records from historians in the internet, other people who have been putting together dots, but you will get lost and overwhelmed so quickly if you didn't have your internal guidance system that you allow to navigate you through this through this maze, you can say, and then come yes, exactly. So, and then it's also like, okay, what do you want to know? What's important for you? What part of history do you want to have clear? And then also to be okay, to always let it go, to be okay if you'll never exactly, how are you going to verify it? How are you really going to know what really happened? And it's always going to be, what kind of perspective are you taking? If you say, oh, okay, I want to take the perspective of the bird's eye. I want to take the bird's eye and not the perspective of a single person in history. I want the bird's eye. Who's the bird? Okay, I want God's perspective. Well, if our minds are not up to par with God's mind, then how are we going to do that? So that's the thing, because the recordings always happen through a mind, through a particular DNA that runs through a being that has a mind. And so then it's your mind interpreting that being's mind. So that's also, it's that openness again, that being completely open and receiving and surrendering also means you don't hold on to anything. You're not rigid. You don't hold on to any particular way that history could have been. So, but you are open to the dots that are coming together in your field. And then it can become clearer, because yes, this is about clear seeing. And that's why yesterday I watched one and then into another one, documentaries of Robert Zephyr. And in the one, it was about, or what came through was that king, and I touched upon it in my video before, but I'm just going to give another part of it that I didn't in the video before. King and dragon, the root of those words in the I think it's Indo-Germanic, that is a root language. It's a Sanskrit and Old Germanic root language of Aryan, exactly. So it's the Aryan language, exactly. That's like a root language from which a whole slew, so many languages come from. All the European languages, pretty much, I think almost all of them come from that root language. So from king and dragon goes back to the same root, meaning seeing clearly. This is so completely, again, code, synchronicity, recognition. This is what has been coming through in my code, is how it's about, that's what is at the bottom of the sea. Sea, container of water. At the bottom of the sea is a container of water, is chalice. And chalice is heart. Chalice is heart. It's also womb, and it's also receiver, and it's also heart. I'm going to show this all in the code. And so at the bottom of the sea is at the same time what the message was for me, what clearly was my code that came through, was you can only see clear at the bottom of the sea which is from the bottom of your heart, which is also from that neutral perspective within the 0 point. Yeah, but always connected to the heart. And because the center of the heart is neutral, and love pours forth. That's why love can pour forth. There's nothing in the way. It's just open. It's completely open. And what is light, when it comes through that open heart, that is what love is. And light is also the divine, so that is God. That is our source of all life. And that can come through the heart when it is completely open, and that is felt as love. So yes, I wanted to correct that. It does have to do with love. When I recognize its code, I feel it in the heart. It's not like with every code, like that it's love in the sense of it's not romantic love or so, but it is a recognition. It is unity consciousness. You can feel it's coming from unity consciousness. And where is that unity felt? In the heart, where there is no separation. That's when we feel no separation, we feel love. Or we can say when we feel love, we feel that connection to the other person. It's like it's one in the heart. And it doesn't matter whether that other being at the same moment is also feeling love for us. What it is enough that when we feel love for a being, we feel our oneness with them. And it is not, it's not the oneness of who you think you are. It is the oneness of your true self with them. Yes. So, did I bring everything through now? In that we are being guided. We allow for the guidance. We are open. Seeing clearly. Yes, we can only see. Yes, we can only see clearly with an open heart. That is the code that has come through. We can only see clearly with an open heart. And then that chaos, that maze, can shape and form into an alive story that speaks to us through our own DNA, and we can find in the history what it is that we are truly looking for. And then we are also guided to that red thread that threads through everything. So when you have all the different versions of history, there are these puzzle pieces that keep showing up. That is like, okay, red thread, part of the red thread, part of the red. And how you thread that is your individual. You can only do that through guidance. You could never do this mentally. Yes. And then to always stay open and really not know at the same time what really happened. And of course, it's something else if you have a book and someone was directly there and you can tell with your heart that they are speaking the truth. They are, to the best of their abilities, they are recording what they perceived. And then again, you can feel that. And that is then, for example, that would be a good record. Yes, that would be data that would bring you close to what really happened. But how are you going to gauge that? You can only gauge that with your heart. Like, for example, when I was 16, I read Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, and it really was one of those books that blew my mind. That it opened my mind, and I was, after that, it shifted my paradigm. It opened the box that my mind was in before, because I read so many things that he experienced that it's like, I cannot imagine how should that happen? How is this possible? You know, that which he experienced, because it was so fantastical. It was like reading fantasy and parts of it, you know, like reading fantasy, but like when his teacher manifested, this is just something I remember, his teacher manifested for him this golden palace, for example, and then he walked into the golden palace, and this was not him having a lucid dream. This was real. I'm like, how is this? So it's something I could not imagine how it would be possible. And at the same time, I could feel, however, this man is telling the truth. He is relaying it exactly how he experienced it. So that was like a dichotomy in itself, which stretched my mind. Yeah. Okay. I'll leave it at that. Namaste.